freedom, oh, freedom, oh, freedom.
We're here to welcome Robert Gordon here to speak for us tonight, and Robert has a very long, what do I want to say, resume here. I just tell you a little bit about what I could summarize. Singer, musician, writer, and avid collector of African American memorabilia, and that's what we're here to hear about tonight. He's been involved with the Gal Police Emancipation Day celebration, which is what, the longest ongoing emancipation celebration in the nation. Pretty impressive. Was appointed by Governor Kasich to the Martin Luther King Jr. Holiday Commission. He's serving his second term currently on the Ohio Humanities Board of Directors. He co-founded the Emancipation Proclamation Scholarship Fund, which continues to enhance educational attainment by area youth of African American heritage. And professionally, Mr. Gordon provides technical, operational, and facilities services to nonprofit, public and private sector organizations through his position as project manager at Ohio University's School of Leadership and Public Affairs. So, any more he wants to tell you about that, he can, because it's quite an impressive resume. And anyway, I just want to welcome you tonight, and I'm kind of excited about this. We were all geared up to hear about it last week, and we're raring to go. So, thank you. It's all
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm so glad we have a nice crowd here this evening. I apologize that the weather didn't cooperate the last 2 times we tried to schedule this, so I hope it's worth it this evening. So I want to tell you that I'm pretty non-traditional as a speaker. I hope I'm not too stiff up here. I like to move a little bit, I like to talk, and I like to interact with folks. So please, if you have questions at any time, or if you want to ask me about something that we're talking about, or have something to add, please let me know. Raise your hand. I'll be happy to call on you. As he mentioned, yeah, there's a little bit of a resume that goes with this rascal you see up here in front of you, but we'll not go too heavy on that this evening. I do have a background in mental health, drug and alcohol, working in the 3 counties of Yaya, Jackson, and Meigs. I also served as a former city manager in Gallup Police, so that's a little bit of time in there. And as you mentioned, a project manager for Ohio University currently. The French Art Colony Board of Directors in Gallup Police, which is where I exhibited for the Black History Month last year. So I was very happy to have my collection there. And then the Ohio Chautauqua Committee in Gallup Police, which is a function of the Ohio Humanities. And then I sit on the state level Ohio Humanities Board. And then finally, the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Holiday Commission, which I am very, very privileged to be a part of. I have some calendars over here on the counter that you're welcome to pick up if you would like one. It commemorates, highlights pieces from Dr. King's life, as well as excerpts from students that participated in an oratorical contest. So you can get a little taste of that each month as you go throughout the year. You're welcome to pick one of those up if you like before you leave. I wanted to begin tonight talking a little bit about my particular background, and I wanted to begin with heritage first. And as you know, we all have our mother's side and our father's side, and some of us know a little bit more about that than others, and that's okay. But that's where I began most interested in collecting. That's where it began for me, is wanting to know more about my heritage. I'm privileged to have a few of my own in the audience tonight, which I won't embarrass them. I have my 2 sons. 2 of my 3 sons are here with us this evening, so I'm glad to see them here this evening. On my father's side, Old Virginia slaves in Mason County over in West Virginia, which was considered Old Virginia. They then moved to Gallup Police, Ohio, where they spent time as laborers and masons primarily. On my mother's side, again, slaves in Old Virginia, which again was what we call West Virginia today. They came to an area called Poke Patch, Ohio, which we will talk about a little bit more as we go on this evening. And they did a lot of work in the furnaces in that particular area, and then went on to become farmers. So, and many of them are still in the farming trades today, trying to make a living in the farm trades, as tough as it is these days. Again, on my father's side, primarily African American. Mother's side, again, the same thing. However, there's always a little something interesting in your bloodline when you pay attention to it and get to doing a little research. On my father's side, also Irish American. I was telling someone earlier the story of one of my great-great-grandfather chose his bride, went to the father and said, "I'd like to have her hand in marriage." She was not of color. And the gentleman on the farm said, "You got to cut me enough wood for the winter, and I'll give you her hand," thinking that's not going to happen. Well, he did it. And he took her hand and brought her to Gallipolis. So thus, my Irish great-grandmother. And on the mother's side, there's also Native American heritage that we believe to be so. That is something I'm still researching for as far as myself. I do have relatives that sit on the Saponi tribe of Ohio in Columbus. So I know that it's there, but I haven't finished the research on my own. And then the grandfather on that side, on my mother's side as well, we know that he came out of Virginia into Ohio as the son of a slave, and we believe that his father was not of color, and probably from the farm or the plantation where they were at the time before they came to Ohio. She being very dark-skinned, him being very light-skinned as her son. Oh, the comment I wanted to make about my great-grandmother, so my grandfather's mother on my mother's side, they said that she could outwork any man during the day and outdance him at night. I was pretty proud of that. Excuse me for a moment. I wanted to focus on two individuals under genealogy where I've done some research that I thought you might be interested in this evening. One on my father's side, and that's Frank Gordon. And he was my great uncle, so my grandfather's brother. And then Henry Hutchinson Sr. on my mother's side, which is my great-great-grandfather. I wanted to begin with Frank Gordon because I think that living here in Athens, you'll find some of his history interesting. He was born in Gallipolis, Ohio in 1901. Attended the Lincoln Colored School there. There were actually two colored schools in Gallipolis, and he attended the Lincoln School. He earned his BS in agriculture in 1925. That was from Ohio State University. And in 1930, he got his master's in agriculture, poultry and bacteriology. Excuse me for the pronunciation. Was his major. He also had a year in genetics, postmasters, at Ohio State University. He moved on into 1930, doing agriculture as an instructor at the West Virginia State College. Those were normal schools at that time, predominantly serving the African American communities. And this is a very interesting article here in the Crisis magazine, which was put out by the NAACP. And I know you can't read that fine print very well, but we're going to get to that in just a moment. So in, that would be in 1931, yes. The Crisis magazine says that Frank Gordon, former agriculture instructor at West Virginia State College, is the first Negro to be appointed on the faculty of Ohio University. He is to be an assistant instructor. Now, when you read history here at OU, you can't find that. And I thought that was interesting, because it says it right here in a national magazine. It was proclaimed. This was kind of the society page, if you will. So they put interesting tidbits. But there was another reason why he was not able to fulfill that position. So let's look a little closer. As I mentioned, that was from the NAACP Crisis Journal. In 1931, Joseph Stalin, yes, the Joseph Stalin, had approached George Washington Carver, and he said that he needed some assistance in the Soviet Union with their cotton production. And he wanted him to come over and help him with that, help him to instruct the individuals there in the Soviet Union. Well, George Washington Carver was challenged a bit by that. There was a lot of things going on in the country at that time period, as you can imagine. And however, he didn't want to not be hospitable to Mr. Stalin. That might not be healthy. But also he had a responsibility to the folks in the United States, being an African American in the United States, and the labels that would be put on you if you were associated with someone from Russia. So what he did was, he put together a group of Negro scholars. And he said, you know, what I can do for you is I can send those scholars, this group of scholars, over to you in Russia and assist you with the work that you're trying to do. So these individuals boarded this steamship to Hamburg, Germany, moved on to Uzbekistan, Russia. This particular information is captured in this book, and you'll see a copy of the book up here, called Blacks, Reds, and Russians. My great uncle, Frank Gordon, was one of those Negro scholars. So he was chosen as an ambassador to Russia on behalf of George Washington Carver, and at the request of Mr. Stalin. So that's the reason he didn't come to OU. So I'm not so disappointed in that. So that's a pretty good honor. This particular book was written in 2008. Dr. Carew has a descendant that was also a part of that particular trip, so she is very knowledgeable. A very interesting book. It's a nice read. For example, it covers the history of individuals like Paul Robeson, that was also over in the Soviet Union at the same time. Just a few quick points about that I wanted to make. When they arrived over there, you know, they were seeing mud-caked houses, you know, with snow covered on them. They were experiencing trains and camels and trucks and open-air carts pulled by donkeys. Very different experience than they were having in the States for these African Americans to go over to Russia, this whole new land. They worked in the machine tractor station, the seed selection station of the State Cotton Trust. They worked with cotton, sugar beets, peanuts. As foreigners, but also the equivalent of party leaders, they received a special treatment. So their houses and servants and a salary equivalent of $600 per month. Wow. So they were doing pretty good. They were doing pretty good. They worked with industry in Stalingrad and Moscow. They developed rope from rice fibers with the Soviet Rice Institute. They taught irrigation and mechanization. Also, they worked in a tomato cannery in Georgia, poultry breeding farms, and when their time in Russia was over with, they returned back to the States to be met again with the Jim Crow era. So a very different experience for them overseas. He went on to be published in the Science Monthly, Preservation of Small Amphibia in Gelatin. He worked at the West Virginia State College as an agricultural instructor. He also spent some time at Wilberforce University and Central State College at that time, excuse me, as well as Tuskegee Institute, Tennessee State College, A&T College, and Georgia State College. This picture is of him with the Central State College of Farm College. And he dies in 1960. So that is my great uncle, Frank Gordon. Now I'd like to introduce you to my great-great-grandfather, Henry Hutchinson. And if you'll allow me to read. Imagine you are standing in the doorway of an old country church. The hardwood floors creak when you walk across them. The walls are lined with soldiers of long, narrow wooden benches, each one sagging just a little in the middle. Halfway down the aisle of the benches gave way to a large potbelly stove. The room smells of aged paper, mothballed clothing, and horehound candy. Passing a kaleidoscope of friends and neighbors, you make your way to the seats that have held generations of your family. An aging figure of a matriarch struggles to her feet and without a word of introduction begins to hum and then sing. Almost as instructed, the other parishioners join the familiar hymn, tapping their feet in rhythm as one. Oh, freedom, oh, freedom, oh, freedom over me. Before I'd be a slave in my grave, and go home to my Lord and be free. My great-great-grandfather, an escaped slave and Civil War veteran, donated the property to build that very church. Over 3 generations of my kin are buried between the church and where the old outhouses still stand. Tall reverend oaks line the side yard. We ate many a meal off the wooden slab tables under their shade. The food was good, the love and the laughter plentiful, and the music inspiring. During my childhood, I experienced the same scene time after time. The churches changed and the people varied, but the warm, comfortable feelings were always consistently the same. The music of the African American churches of this region have sustained many generations. No matter how far I venture from these hallowed hills, the sound of music brings me back home. Thank you. I delivered that monologue in March of 2009 at the Appalachian Studies Association Conference on the campus of Shawnee University. I had a completely different speech prepared that particular night, but you know, this particular one came to me, and as I wrote here, almost like a whisper from my elders. Henry Hutchinson was born in 1837 to slaves Daniel and Susan Hutchinson. That was in Mason County, Virginia, old Virginia. His parents, Daniel and Susan, were owned by James Beale at the time of his birth. He endured this bondage for 24 years, excuse me. When filled with determination and a lust for something more, he decided to taste freedom. Approximately December the 26th, 1861, Henry escaped the Moore plantation by crossing the Ohio River. This particular piece that you see here appeared in the Gallipolis paper about my grandfather and his brother. Now you see many bulletins about escaped slaves, but you don't often know the families that they were tied to. I was very fortunate to find this piece that speaks to my grandfather. And if I can read. 2 Negro slaves belonging to Mr. George Moore of Mason County, Virginia, named Henry and Daniel Hutchinson, aged 22 and 25, about 5 foot 8 inches in height, concluded to take a trip northward for the benefit of their health. That's what it says. It appears they crossed at Steenbergen's ferry, taking the skiff and leaving it on the Ohio side. Mr. Moore offers a reward of $200 for their re-delivery. This kind of property is just now of very precarious tenure, and the best course our neighbors over the river can adopt is to get rid of it as soon as possible. The new Constitution of Virginia, adopted by Pierpoint administration, may find some means of gradually getting rid of the black cattle that have and are causing so much trouble. So my great-grandfather was worth $100 on his head and considered to be black cattle at the time of his escape. He ended up in the area of Poke Patch, as I mentioned before, but that was not going to be the end of his journey. Poke Patch was an area where he worked as a woodcutter, and it was a unique community. There you had whites, and blacks, mulattoes, Native Americans, all living in harmony together. This played an integral role in the Underground Railroad as well, aiding fugitive slaves on their quest to freedom, as my great-grandfather. The Ohio River was all that separated many from the South. Unfortunately, soon after finding his refuge in Poke Patch, he was discovered by slave bounty hunters and returned to the plantation. But the story doesn't end there. He escaped again to Poke Patch. Now, we know that was in 1863. Family folklore is that he escaped twice. But what I cannot tell you is that was also about the time of the Emancipation Proclamation. So it may have actually been, he may have actually got his freedom from the Emancipation versus an additional escape. So he went on to attend the one-room school after his emancipation, and where he learned to read and write at age 27. This is his military document. In 1864, he would be in the Civil War, the colored troops. He would come out as a private, and he had worked, previously it was written down that he was a collier. My understanding is that is a professional charcoal burner, so thus associated with his occupation with the furnaces. In 1868, he would marry his sweetheart, Amanda Chavis, daughter of John and Mary Chavis. They were abolitionists in the region. They would go on to have 22 children. Yeah. I can't imagine. Now, it wasn't without tribulation. She lost at least 5 children at birth. 2 additionally were killed by lightning as they lay sleeping in the bed together. In addition to his birth children, Henry also raised his son after his brother was killed in the Civil War, which was the custom then. You didn't necessarily send your children off to a children's home. You brought them into the family if at all possible. Henry donated the property. The family home church, where the family home church is, Corinth Baptist, as I mentioned in my write-up earlier. And he was laid to rest in 1928. This particular picture is from a family reunion that they had in 1927. The first reunion was in 1908. He insisted that they continue those family reunions on an ongoing basis even after he died in 28. Those reunions are still continuing today. That is last year, and that big rascal on the end there in the yellow is myself. I happen to be the current president of the family reunion, so I'm very proud of that, to do that on his behalf. Again, this is John Chavis, who I mentioned earlier, an abolitionist and a member of the Benevolent Society in Gallia County, as well as other members of Paint Creek Baptist Church were operators working with the Underground Railroad there. A benevolent society, or a mutual aid society, if you will, is an organization or volunteer association formed to provide mutual aid and benefit or insurance for relief of sundry difficulties. So they could also do things for individuals like include money or assistance for sickness, retirement, education, birth of a child, funeral, medical expenses, etc. So those were the roles of the Benevolent Society. You will see a piece over here on the table from the Mutual Aid Society in Gallipolis as well. 1899 is the date of that piece. I want to move on just a little bit, if we could, to talk about another era, which is many of the pieces that you see in front of you, and we call that Jim Crow. From the end of the Civil War up through the Civil Rights Movement. You have things such as the Ku Klux Klan, black-faced minstrels, Sundown Towns, and the Green Book, each of which we will talk about a little bit this evening. This first piece here, We Cater Only to White Trade, appeared in a restaurant in Lancaster, Ohio in 1938. Lancaster, Ohio, not the Deep South, 1938. Cincinnati, Ohio. This public swimming pool, whites only sign. Now, I think the sign has a little bit of history. I think it was around prior to this time. But this particular individual hung that sign up. Let's see. My apologies, I have that note here. It was a more recent time period in the 1980s, I believe, was a time period. My apologies, I didn't have that date here in front of me. In Cincinnati, Ohio, there was a 10-year-old black female that was visiting her father, who was not of color, and he had allowed her to swim in the pool of the duplex. The duplex owner said that the chemicals in her hair caused the water to become cloudy. So thus they thought that it was appropriate to put this sign up saying that it was for whites only. The Ohio Civil Rights Commission actually had to get involved and resolve that particular matter. Cincinnati, Ohio, okay? Not Your Parents' Social Club. What was happening in the U.S. in the 1860s? Anyone? Civil War. Anything else? Emancipation. Quite a few things were causing the buzz. The Klan began in approximately 1866 by 6 ex-Confederate soldiers. The gentleman asked me earlier about when they may have started. Considered themselves to be a social club. This particular word means Greek for circle. Interesting, a circle. So the club. Much of their behavior was around nighttime pranks in sheets and pillowcases, which we have heard of before. In 1867, the racism focus became more prevalent, and they elected their first imperial wizard, Nathan Forrest. In 1869, Forrest disbanded the group due to threats of government punishment for terrorizing supporters of blacks. In 1915, William Simmons, which was an Alabama Methodist Episcopal minister, reorganized the Klan and introduced the burning cross to the group. What do you think the burning cross symbolized? Does anybody know? Anyone care to guess?
The light of Christ.
Jesus Christ being the light of the world. You are exactly right. I won't ask how you know that.
Because I watch lots of documentaries.
There you go. Excellent, excellent answer. The group was thought by some as a benevolent public service organization or a fraternal order, like the Freemasons, if you will, except with racial segregation and white supremacy as their mission. Now, an expanded negative focus to include communists, people of Jewish descent, Catholics, labor union organizers, all of those things came into play. And as we all know, they are historically known for intimidation and violence, as well as brutal lynchings. In 1944, the IRS issued a lien against the Ku Klux Klan for $685,000 in back taxes. The national organization reportedly folds. When we think about the Klan, we often think about them historically, not necessarily currently. It is with some dismay, if you will, that I have to report to you that the loyal white knights of the Ku Klux Klan still consider themselves to be active and have a role in communities. Most recently, they've put out some material. Some of the information on that material is Help Save Our Race, Fighting for Equal Rights for Whites. Always remember, if it ain't white, it ain't right. White power. These are some of the slogans that appeared in Hillsborough, Ohio in September of 2013. 2013. In addition, there's been some circulation of what I refer to as treat bags, because I don't know what else you would call them. And I'll pass this through the audience. As you'll see, the bottom picture is of a Ziploc bag and has some candy in it, but it also has some information from the Klan in it. So the upper picture is the piece that is there that was put out by the Klan. Those were distributed in the vicinity of my home in Gallup Place, Ohio in 2014. 2014. Some of the recruitment flyers look like this. You can sleep tonight knowing that the Klan is awake. This is a letter that also was posted. So they have a variety of ways of communicating with folks and getting their messages out. So they're still recruiting, if you will. Some of the information that I have on the table beside me over here includes, the postcard I didn't put out tonight, and I apologize for that. I don't have that particular piece with me. I think it's in the book here. You'll find it in the flip book here. You'll see a 1924 Klan rally notice, a 1925 flag, as well as a Nazi lapel pin. Now, the one thing I wanted to tell you about the notice. It's a program. It's with the white frame around it here. You want to take a look at that. Program and a parade at Platte National Park in Sulphur, Oklahoma, proclaiming the Klan playground of the Southwest. Meet Ku Klux Bill, the world's youngest clucker. So you will see a child in a Ku Klux Klan outfit in that particular article. Yeah. The flag that you see underneath the pieces here was from Bristol, Tennessee, possibly an event that happened in that particular region. And as I mentioned, the Nazi pin, what we refer to as a Nazi pin, individuals today also identify with that particular swastika to be associated with this kind of thinking and behavior, whether it's actual or not. but those individuals collect that kind of information and tag it to it as well. Among the other articles that you'll see here is a copy of Thomas Dixon's Klansman from 1905. Now let me tell you a little bit how I came to acquire these last couple of things here. A lady in my hometown of Gallipolis approached me at the loss of her grandfather. And she said, I have a few things of my grandfather's who recently passed away. They were his worldly possessions that he had left in the trunk of his car when we emptied his car. They are not customary things that you would get from your grandfather. And she did not want to be associated with them. But she knew that I did this kind of work. And she said, if you will share it with others, I would like you to have it because I don't want to be identified with it. So in the trunk of her grandfather's car was this officer's Klan robe, which once belonged to her grandfather. His helmet, that we refer to as a hood, his membership booklet, his white book, and you will see that it's for an exalted Cyclops, which is the title of his office. And then his copy, signed by Thomas Dixon to him. Those were the items that he had in his car as his worldly possessions at the time of his death. How important was it to this gentleman, his legacy and his history with the Klan? So he would have been wearing this just after the turn of the century. So, and this particular outfit is not from the Deep South. It's from the New Boston area, just north of Portsmouth, Ohio. Portsmouth, Ohio, the Ku Klux Klan. So the flip book here, you'll see, and when I say flip book, let me show you what I'm referring to. It's this notebook here. It has blown up pages out of this document here. And if you look inside it, you'll see that it says very clearly that we of the world outside of the Klan are not to have this information, and we're not to be exposed to it. So it would not be acceptable for me to even own these items, let alone share them with you. But again, the purpose for tonight is to remember, not to forget, so that we don't repeat. Oh, this is the statement out of the document there. I forgot that I put that on the slide. So I will read that to you. The book or any part of it must not be kept or carried where any person of the alien world may chance to become acquainted with its sacred contents as such. Pretty clear. And that's the kind of language that is all the way through the document. Again, these were not individuals that didn't know what they were doing, that were not organized. These gentlemen, again, when you read it, it reads very much like a document from the Masons or any other group that was around at the same period of time. Everybody with me so far? Mm-hmm. All right. I want to move on and talk a little bit about blackface minstrels, if we could. Again, blackface minstrels was an exaggerated stereotype. It's been around since the 1830s. Individuals would use burnt cork or grease paint or shoe polish even, individuals of color to blacken their face and then to mimic what they considered to be behaviors of people of color in the forms of skits and programs, music, etc. The makeup that you see here is from a New York company. So, I mean, they were actually producing makeup, for people to wear. Here's another example of a product specifically made for blackface minstrels. Abrams and Vogel's Big Jubilee Minstrels was out of Chillicothe, Ohio. And they were around in about 1877. Vogel went on to become considered as the minstrel king. So I thought that was very interesting. Chillicothe, Ohio. The Burnt Quakers Incorporated, circa 1941, came out of Lancaster, Ohio. And I have a flip book here about the Burnt Quakers. This is their logo of the Burnt Quakers. Okay? And in here you will see different ads, etc., information about the Burnt Quakers, other individuals doing blackface. But they produced a newsletter that went out to folks and had folks from all over the country come to be trained by this organization known as the Burnt Quakers Incorporated. Now, you may also know of minstrel shows that were held throughout the region, and early opera houses and tent shows, etc. This particular picture here speaks to one that was not so far away from here. The Wellston Rotary Minstrel Show. Wellston, Ohio. Their first show was in 1947, and it was produced by the Burnt Quakers. And again, as I mentioned, dramas, songs, skits, etc. Over there in some of the cases on the end, you will find other examples of blackface dramas. There's a couple on the end down there, one large book and one small book. You will also see several other blackface characters here. These large panels here are from Jimmy Schumer's radio program out of Cincinnati, Ohio, where he did 22 voices on his program, all in a very strong African-American dialect, or an exaggerated African-American dialect. But then there's also artwork to go with them that they publish at the same time. You may find those interesting. Something else I'd like to talk to you about is sundown towns. Anybody know what a sundown town is?
You can't be a person of color and be there after the sun sets.
After the sun sets, exactly right. Was that the answer that you had, ma'am, as well?
That was in Missouri, too.
In Missouri. It's all across the country. You are correct. Don't let the sun set on you here. Understand?
That was a nice one.
That was a very nice one. Very polite one. Purposely an all-white city, town, or neighborhood. They would post warnings for people of color to leave town by sundown. Now, why do you think I purposely wrote people of color here and not just African Americans? Anyone want to guess?
It didn't matter what you were as long as you weren't white.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Yeah, so they didn't want anyone in that particular town that wasn't pure, if you will. Now, how do we know that sundown towns exist other than just through folklore? Very interesting research done and is captured in this book called Sundown Towns. Mr. James Lowen, his work, actually, I think he's out of Pennsylvania. I'm not for sure about that. You could check. The copy of the book is up here if you'd like to look at it. Very interesting. But he took a look at census record patterns. So he could prove to you that at one point in history, there were these individuals of color that moved into a particular area, and by the next census, they were gone completely. Not a single one left. No disease, no famine, nothing like that. White folks were still there. Black folks were gone. Or they were in a community just outside. And he could show you that pattern over and over and over again across the United States. Now, did we have such a thing in this particular area? Yeah, inside his book he names one particular community by name, Waverly, Ohio. What kind of documentation is there in Waverly, Ohio? They had an early history of not allowing African Americans to purchase property or even remain after dusk. Land for the Waverly Courthouse, everyone paying attention, was donated, stipulating it was to, quote, revert back to the owner if an African American was ever allowed to settle within the town. The very land that was given for the courthouse. Pretty powerful, huh? Pretty serious about keeping their community pure.
What year was that?
I'd have to look at that a little closer. I have some other documentation here. I'd be happy to show you that afterwards. I'll put that in my notes for the next time. Thank you, sir. And one of the last things I want to share with you this evening is the Negro Motorist Green Book. I entitled this particular section, Driving While Black. Now, that's a term that we hear in modern times. Surely historical piece doesn't apply to the same thing, right? Let's look a little closer. Let's see, can I want to show you a piece from Mr. Ernest Green, who you may know from the Civil Rights Movement with the Little Rock Nine. One of the African American students who braved death threats, as it says here, in harassment at Central High School in Arkansas in '57. Victor Green, who was the originator of the Green Book, said the Green Book was one of the survival tools of segregated life. Now, they started putting this together in 36, 34, and it went national in 37. It was free at the time, 10 cents to have it mailed to you. Sponsored by the Esso Standard Oil touring service. You got anyone remember Esso? Yeah. And allowed individuals to identify hotels, boarding houses, restaurants, beauty shops, barber shops, and other services. Now, why do you think that was important for African Americans to know where those places were that they were welcome as they were traveling across the country? Ladies, if you were, yes ma'am.
Probably kept doing confrontations
Yes.
with people that didn't want them.
Yes, that was definitely true. Definitely true. So ladies, if you were to come into Athens today and you wanted to have your hair done, but you were not welcome in the beauty shops in Athens, but save one, would that not be important for you to know where that one was? Yes. Even more personal, if there were only 2 stops in Athens where you could actually go in and use the bathroom, would that not be important as you were traveling through? Yeah. So when you think about it at that level, it is very important for you to be able to identify these pieces. And just as you said, ma'am, the challenges along the way. So the Green Book was actually a listing of stops across the nation where individuals of color were welcome. So you could find a place to eat, a place to use the facilities, a place to get your hair done, a place to stay overnight if you needed to, etc. I'm sure there are individuals in the room now that can tell stories of your families traveling. You always had sandwiches in the car. You always had something to drink in the car. Always had a little toilet paper in the car. You didn't leave home without those kinds of things. And it always wasn't just true for people of color. Sometimes country folks, we had to take ours along as well, because you might not necessarily be welcome in every situation. The Green Book primarily was there for people of color because they definitely, during the Jim Crow era, were limited on their resources. Mr. Green wrote in his book, would be necessary when we as a race will have equal opportunities and privileges. That was his goal. and he died in 1960. 1960. I wish he could have lived through the 1960s to see much of his dream realized. The 1964 Civil Rights Act made the Green Book and similar publications obsolete, just as Mr. Green predicted. Some recent interest, you can find at the Henry Ford Museum. You can find copies of the 1949 Green Book online. At the University of Southern Carolina in their digital collection, you can find the 56 Green Book online. And again, the 56 through the digital collections has an interactive map, so you can actually look at the stops on a map across the country that were recorded in that particular year. And each year was a little bit different, where the stops were, places being torn down, others being added, etc. And in 2010, there was actually a play called The Green Book by Calvin Ramsey. Since then, there's also been a youth library book that is out about the Green Book. Those are the primary areas that I wanted to show you tonight. And I think we finished in just under an hour. So that was a lot of material.